Okay, welcome to a Father's Flame podcast today. We have a special guest, Eric Oberempt. Eric, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, why don't you bring us up to speed on like where you're at? Who is Eric?
Who is Eric? Heck of a question.
Yeah.
So Eric Oberempt, I actually reside now just north of Houston area. Just moved here from Omaha, Nebraska. Lived there my entire life for 43 years and uprooted my family. And we all decided that we didn't like snow anymore. And so we packed up our shit and we moved south. I own a roofing company in Nebraska that my grandfather actually started back in the 60s. And I started working with him when I was about 10 years old, and we still have that office there. And then we opened another office here in Texas as well. That's how I generate revenue. That's how I make money. But all the other stuff I do is what I'm really passionate about. Um, I do. I have a nonprofit that I started. I co-founded with a buddy of mine called Roofers in Recovery, and we're a nonprofit, and we raise money throughout the year to send people to treatment in the roofing space. So we kind of have this theory that roofing gave us our lives. We're a bunch of old drunks and, kind of got in trouble and, big pain in the ass growing up. And not a lot of people thought we'd really amount to anything. And this industry kind of gave us this opportunity to succeed, right, and to win. And there's a lot of people in our industry that struggle. And so we raise money to be able to help those people and to send them to treatment, because that was what got me sober, and that was what saved my life, was going to treatment. I also speak. I kind of go on the circuit and speak at different conferences, talk about leadership a lot. I'm really passionate about leadership and how to create a cult-like following inside of your company where people want to follow you and stay with you, instead of worrying about what most of us in the business community worry about is turnover. Right. And so I speak a lot about that and keeping people in your business. So my whole thing is I like to figure out ways to help people. And when I'm in that green light go state of life, where everything is flowing the way that it's supposed to be, I'm helping. And whether that's in recovery or it's in business, or it's in, speaking to large groups of people, that's how I feel like I can give back. I can and help others become the human that they were supposed to be, and not the one that's living in the possible misery that they might be right now.
So I really like what you're sharing. I like the nonprofit. I want to get into that, but like, where did this when did this start for you? Like, cause you sound like you just really are out, you're just helping, you're trying to create, um, uh, motivate or not create, but speak to motivation to just helping other people. Like, is this, a mission or a drive you've always had, or what changed for you?
I really noticed it when when we started hiring people into my business, right? So back in the day, like back when it was me and my grandpa, we didn't have employees, right? We were a two-man operation, and just kind of getting by. And then grandpa got sick. I took over the company, and he passed away, and I started investing into the company and hiring people. And I started investing into my own personal growth, my own personal journey. I started being the guy that was spending money to up level me. And I didn't know what that exactly looked like. I didn't know what the payoff was of it. I just had this overwhelming feeling that I needed to do it. What I didn't know was what was going to happen was that it would directly link to my business, right? And that my business would become better because of it. Well, then all of a sudden, I had all these people in my business, and I had all these lessons that I had learned. And I was like, well, I need to be imparting this wisdom to them as well, right? And so all of a sudden I started helping people grow in this micro community of my business, and watching, these half a dozen, 18 people like start to level up and become better, and see like the light turn on, for them every once in a while, was such an overwhelming like feeling of gratitude when that happened. I made this decision. I was like, I need to figure out how to do this on a larger scale, right? It was one of the reasons I started my podcast. And then I started kind of just speaking a little bit on the side, because I have friends that own different conferences, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, will you come speak at this?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And then it just kind of snowballed, and it's just turned into a thing that I'm really passionate about, and I get so much from it, and the just the satisfaction of being able to serve.
Okay. How did you first how were you first doing that with your employees, like, before you got on the stages? Is this like, just
Mhm.
morning meetings? Is this on the job? Is this structured in any way, or was it just, like, flowing out of you?
So part of it's structured, right? Like we would do like book clubs and we do things like that so that we could all read something together and then sit down and talk about it. And I would make a requirement of like you had to sit down and take one thing from the book that you were going to implement into your life to make you better, and then implement into your job to make you better at your job, right? Um, at the end of the day, a lot of what I speak about is personal connections. And the fact that a lot of that has gone away because of social media, because of all these different outlets that people have to not have to actually interact with people, and the changes that you make in another human's life by sitting down in the same room as them and having a conversation with empathy. And whether or not you agree, disagree, whatever it is with wherever they're coming from, but that you're taking the opportunity to understand where they're coming from, um that's how you make this real connection. And that was where I got the most traction with my people, was that I was taking that time, so that at the end of the day we truly, everybody talks about it, like it's a family business, we run as a like everybody in my company, we truly feel like we are another family, we're an extension of our at home family, but like we are another family, and that's how we're going to treat each other. And when we have disagreements, we act like a family, right? Like you got big brothers you want to punch in the face, but then when you get done, you go hug it out because you know that the other person does actually care about you, they just pissed you off in that moment, right? And so if you're willing to have those empathetic conversations, um, that's where I got the most traction with all of my people, right? Is having those one-on-one conversations. My job is not to service my clients anymore, right? My job is not to service my clients. My job is to service my employees. And once I figured that out, because I know if I do that, then they're going to service my clients the way that I want them to.
Wow. I've never heard anyone say that. I really like that. So you're getting roofers into book clubs, right? Like, this just
Well, I
seems.
mean, not the installers, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But your management team and your.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Sales reps, management team, admin staff, back end staff. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a huge thing. And then I actually had one of my employees that got so passionate about it. And she was like, look, this is great, but we've been doing this for like 2 years. She had an ex-military background, and she was like, hey, can we do something different? And I'm like, okay, like, what do you want to do? And she came up with different personal development. She loves acronyms because she's ex-military. So like these are PDCs or some shit. Like I don't even know all the acronyms she comes up with, but she came up with her own so that we could start studying and like learning about each other more. So every month we do a different PDC where we learn how each person communicates differently in the company. And she's got another one set up for March. I'm flying back to Omaha to do it. And it's really cool to watch now because I see other people starting to take ownership of the stuff that I started, right? And that they've gotten so invested in it that they see the value in it. And it allows me to retain employees, even when I can't necessarily offer them more money, maybe, right? And they get offers somewhere else. I'm like, I can give you incentive packages, but I can't just give you more money. And they're like, that's fine. That's great. I want to stay here because this is where I want to be. And that's all I'm trying to build, is a place where people don't want to leave.
Man, that is awesome. How long have you kind of had this mentality, I guess? This serving my employees is my job.
Probably the last 8 to 9 years, I would say. I would say that it started right around the time my grandpa got sick and passed away. Before that, I was just the guy just trying to get by, and
Mm,
come up with different ideas so that the business could generate a little bit more revenue. But we didn't have employees, so you can't scale, right? If you're not hiring people to be able to
yeah.
scale, you can't really do that. So once that transition, was formal, and it gave me the ability to kind of do whatever I wanted to do. Um, and I met some people, right? Like you have to meet mentors and coaches and things like that that get you to turn your light on first, right? And I had guys like Sam Taggart at D2D Experts. He's the first guy that turned my light on, and put me in some really uncomfortable situations that I had to get comfortable with, right? And guys like Hunter Ballou, who owns RoofCon and roofing.com, and got to spend time with him. And he put me in some uncomfortable situations where I had to really get deep and think about stuff, right? And if you don't put those people in your life, you're probably not gonna get uncomfortable on your own, right? You're not gonna do uncomfortable shit just because you think you want to do it, right? You have to do it kind of together and have an accountability partner for that.
Interesting. And what part did your grandpa play in all of this? Was he really more just like this providing the opportunity, the skill set, uh, or was he kind of like one of the first mentors?
So, yeah, grandpa was obviously my very first mentor, but in a totally different capacity, right? So, my parents got divorced when I was 7 years old, and I moved in with my grandparents when I was seven. Me and
Okay,
my mom and my sister. So, my grandpa was, for all intents and purposes, my dad, right? So, my grandpa raised me. We were best friends. He was the only person, even to this day, that I could talk to and tell anything to, without judgment, fear, anything like that. Like I'm literally getting kind of emotional talking about it right now. He was literally like the one human that always had me no matter what. Um, and he raised me and taught me, he taught me how he sold. He taught me how to do the actual manual labor. I mean, I worked on roofs into my late 20s. Now keep in mind, I was still drunk and using and like a total pile of shit. But I finally was able to get out of the actual working aspect of it into my 30s, when I started running more day to day of the business. But like I worked until I was 30, and that's hard work, right? Like that's really hard
sure,
work. But
yeah,
he taught me what hard work was. He taught me what that looked like. Like coming home beat and putting in a real day of work and not the shit that we do today. Not me sitting on a computer and making phone calls and having meetings and doing Zooms and doing podcasts and right. Like this is all fun and I love it. Right. And I do it all day long. But he taught me what real work meant with your hands. Right. What I always knew that I wanted to know is how to run a business. He knew how to run a job. He knew how to go from job to job, paycheck to paycheck. Even though he owned his own company, he was still getting paid, right? It was sell a job, build a job, sell a job, build a job, right? That's not a business per se. You just don't have a boss you report to other than your client, right? But it's not really it's not a, it's more of a career, right? And I knew that at some point I wanted to learn how to not do that, but I had no idea what that looked like. But I knew that that's what I wanted, and I just I read. You know what I mean? I'm the guy that I just started reading. I started finding people to emulate and to listen to, and to hook up with. And I spent a lot of money doing that. I spent a lot of money going to conferences, finding mentors, finding coaches, and learning how to do it, the right way, and how to scale and surround myself with good people.
yeah, that's great. Uh, Something I'm thinking about is you mentioned, so you at one point you said you're going to work and you're whatever, you're the drunk or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Where was that transition point for you? Or it sounds like there's some recovery that had to happen, or some kind of like rock bottom or something that changed you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So in October of 2009, I was aiming home and probably 2 o'clock in the morning. And I got pulled over, I think going down the wrong way street. And was getting popped for my fourth offense, felony DUI. And long story short, I was looking at 1 to 5 years in prison. I narrowly dodged a lot of drug charges. I had a lot of drugs in my truck. I also sold cocaine for 2 or 3 years, kind of in my lowest point, and I had a lot of it in my truck. And apparently, I accidentally sold it, and I didn't know it. And so there was just money in my truck. There was also 2 8 balls in my cargo pockets when I got pulled over, and the cop didn't find it. And if he would have, I would have got intent to distribute. I would have gotten all these additional charges that would have been thrown on top of me. Somebody was looking out for me. I don't know what I did. I didn't do anything to deserve that at all. For all intents and purposes, I should be dead or in jail. And when I ended up going to the precinct and getting booked, I was able to talk him into letting me go to the bathroom. And I went to the bathroom and he stood behind me. And while I was going pee, I was able to pull the two 8 balls out of my cargo pocket and flush them. And he didn't see it before I got introduced into population. Because if they would have taken my clothes and found it, that's introducing contraband. That's another year or two on your sentence, right? And I didn't even know at that time what I was
Man,
looking at. Yeah, it was very intense. And I got that fourth DUI and I got out and I still didn't stop. So I was in jail for, I don't know, a few days, half a dozen days, and got let out. And it still wasn't enough to get me to quit. I went home. I had to go. I don't know if you've been through any of this before, but when this happens
no.
to you, you have to go get a drug and alcohol evaluation, right, for the courts. And so I had like 3 or 4 of those already previously, right, because I'd had multiple DUIs and run-ins with the law. So I go to get another one, and the guy tells me that I needed to go to inpatient treatment. I'm like, oof, like I got a mortgage, brother. Like I ain't leaving, like I'm not going to inpatient treatment there. He's like, well, he's like, you can do outpatient. He's like, I don't know if the judge is going to accept that, like once you get sentenced, but you need to do something. I went home, hand to God, this is a real story. He gave me his business card, and his name was Mark. And he gave me his business card, and it was a Valley Hope, which is where I went to treatment. And I had his business card, and I don't know, you don't seem like you did much coke when you were young, but if you but when you do coke, you fold up business cards and use it like as a funnel to fill up baggies and other things, whatever, right? And you use it to just move shit around. So like it gets a thick film of cocaine on the card, right? So at one point you couldn't even read his name. This guy called me every other day for like a month and a half, and I ignored his calls. Every time I ignored his calls because I knew who it was. And I'm like, I don't want to answer the call from the sober guy that's trying to get me to go to treatment. Like, no fucking way. But for whatever reason, his card sat on my end table in my living room by my phone and it never left. It never got thrown away, right? Like those cards get thrown away all the time and you grab a new card, right? Never got thrown away and it was there. And one day in November, I went for about a month and a half hard still after I got out of jail and I got pulled over. I looked over and the card was there still. And I didn't even know whose card it was. I had to lick it and like wipe it off so I could see whose name was on it. And I'm like, shit, I got to call that guy. And I called him and I went to treatment. I was driven 3.5 hours from my home and got admitted into Valley Hope in O'Neill, Nebraska, and was there for 30 days. And for the first week and a half, I didn't want to be there necessarily. I was just there to kind of avoid, consequences. I thought that if I went, that would, get me out of what I was looking at, which wasn't necessarily the case. And one day I was sitting in the lecture hall and they were lecturing and I was looking around the room and you have cups up on the wall, right? So if you come back after a year, you get a cup or you get to hang your cup and there's all this stuff, there's plates. And I'm looking around and I remember I looked out the window and I kind of came back into the room and it was quiet except for the person lecturing, right? And I just go, holy shit, I'm in rehab. Like out loud, just out loud. And the room kind of stopped and looked at me like, what's wrong with this guy? Right. But I had this like really weird epiphany moment. Like, you know what? Normal people don't go to rehab, right? You can make all the excuses you want about why you got in trouble, why you got caught, right? You can tell all the stories, make yourself look as good as you want to. But at the end of the day, if you get to a point in your life that you're sitting in a rehab facility in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Nebraska, maybe you have a problem. And that was the moment where I went, you know what? I'm going to shut up and listen. And that was what I decided to do. I decided to shut up and listen to what the counselors had to say. I left the door open a little bit for God because I didn't want anything, I didn't want any of that in my life whatsoever. Um, and they say AA is how I found my higher power, right? And I think we actually talked about this a little bit on our call, but like without AA, I wouldn't have found my spirituality, right? And every time I go to an AA meeting, I see my God in every single one of those meetings, right? Like that's my church, that's my Sundays, right? Is because I see other people helping other people and saving other people's lives because they want to, and because they know that that's what's going to keep them alive as well. You know, and so it's just
Yeah.
it's a really powerful. That was my moment. I kind of went down a rabbit hole there, sorry, but that was kind of my, that was my moment that got me to that point.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. It seems like you kind of uncovering a thread that once you said that it was people like they're helping people, but it's like part of like you're the way you said it almost made it sound like it's like you're wired to serve people. Like, and if you do that, it's good for you. Like that's just part of life is you should be serving people.
Correct. Yeah. I always equate it back to recovery, right? Because that's where all of these lessons came from for me. And the one of the first things that you're taught after you get sober is that you can't keep it if you don't give it away. So
Interesting.
if you're not there to help somebody, again, that's the 12 step, right? 12
Yeah.
step is helping another alcoholic. But if you don't help other people, you're not going to be able to keep the gift that was so freely given to you, right? Rehab wasn't free, but everything else that came after that, right? Sponsorship, mentorship, meetings, big book, you know, all the stuff that comes with that, the time that other men give to you, they don't charge you for it. They do it because they want to keep their serenity and they want to keep their sobriety, right? And that's why they take the time. That's why I take the time to try and help others in service, is because I know that working with people that are in that state in their life right now is going to keep me where I need to be, because otherwise I'll start to think that I got shit figured out. And the minute that I think I got shit figured out, mm, bad stuff happens. I will tell you this quick story. On my last day of treatment at the rehab center, my counselor came up to me and she said, "What are you the most afraid of?" And my answer was doing well, because I knew
Interesting.
that if I went home and I did well, I'd think that I had shit figured out and that I was okay again, and I would start using and drinking again. And I knew if I did that, I'd probably be dead.
I like that mentality. Because when does anyone ever have life all figured out? And the people that do are somewhat sometimes abrasive because it's like, dude, they're not open to learning. They're not hearing what you're saying on the conversation. It's
Yep.
like this state we can get in, and you're just not that great of a person.
Right. Best quote I heard. I literally heard a quote the other day. Somebody famous probably said it. Excuse me. But they said the most ignorant statement that you can make in your life out loud is, "I know." Anytime you hear
Interesting.
somebody say that, right, it just means they're absolutely closed down to learning.
Which is a
And you're,
terrible place to be.
yep. And it means you're done. You might as well just give up at that point. Like, pack your shit and dig your hole.
No, yeah, you're probably right because actually, I think giving up in some fashion is like that drop off moment that in the humility of that area is where you really can grow out of and something of like I feel like this real manhood kind of comes from that like um, you've been broken, you've been to the bottom, so you see someone else there. There's no way you're tearing that person down. You are gonna
Right.
put some life into that person and encouragement because you know it, you've experienced
Yeah.
it, and it sounds like that's what AA really is. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, guys have been there.
We all know that you can't win if you don't fail, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's talked about all over the place, right? But
Yeah.
it really seems to be the people that have failed the hardest have also won the hardest. It's almost like there is an absolute correlation to the level of that. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh, I lost a few $100 and then I made a billion, right? Like, it's always, I lost $1 million, but then I made, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
it's just, it's not inverse. I don't know. It's just, it's this weird thing. The lower bottom that you have, if you're able to come out of it, your high seems to be that much higher, right? If you're able to come out. The problem is that there's such a large percentage of people that don't come out of it and or don't have the opportunity or the people to help them get out of it because you cannot do it by yourself.
Man, that's a great point. You can't do it yourself. Uh, I think I mean, I think that's how life is. I think sometimes there's like this part of men that, like you were talking about, let's see, just this mindset. I'm getting lost in my notes here, but you can't quite alone. Like you're gonna be broken, isolated, and struggle, but amongst like say a tribe, like or a cord of three strands, right? It's not easily broken.
Mhm.
Like there's just way more strength in like you, me, and him than
Mhm.
just Eric by himself trying to figure out life. But there's this mentality that I feel like is in us at maybe through immaturity, and everyone's different, but like I can't act in front of you like I don't got it together, Eric. I can't tell you um, uh, that I don't know how to deal with this part of my life or this part,
Right.
so I hide it. You
Yep.
know, what are your thoughts on that mentality?
I think that it's such, it's so hard. On the one hand, I believe in being completely open and transparent all the time, right? On the other hand, there's certain people in your life that don't need to know what you're going through because it's going to instill fear into them,
That's good.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's this tightrope that we have to walk, especially as owners, entrepreneurs, business owners. Um, like I can't let my staff know if I'm, having financial difficulties and I'm having to float the company for 6 months out of my own personal money because we're not doing very well. And you know what I mean? Like, and I'm having stress and anxiety over that and blah, blah, blah. Right. Like I can't tell them that because that's going to instill fear into them. But on the other hand, the more open and transparent you are with those people, the more that they trust you as well. So again, there's a fine line that you have to find, right? But I think the real answer to your question is you have to be able to find a circle of people that you can have those conversations with, because if you don't, you're going to explode, right? The last few months I had been going through some stuff, and I'm 100% the guy that internalizes, keeps it to myself, and is like, I can figure this shit out. I've done it before. I'm smart. Like I know what I'm doing, and I want to keep it in because I don't want other people to look at me and be like, oh boy, Eric looks like he's got his shit together, but really he's just clawing at the walls and blah blah blah. Right? That's an ego thing, right? It's all ego. But when you realize that everybody's going through it, right? Or
There you go.
everybody has gone through it. And then all of a sudden you have a conversation with somebody, which I did in the last couple of months. And all of a sudden you realize you see this light turn on in them and they're like, whew, man, I was there a year and a half ago. Let me tell you how I got through it. And if I wasn't brave enough to have that conversation, because it's a sign of strength to ask for help. It's a sign of strength to tell people what you're going through. It's not a sign of weakness. Now, flip side, if all you do is whine, yeah, you're weak. But right, like don't do that. But like it's a sign of strength to take a moment to ask another man for advice or for help, because it's the only way that you're going to grow is learning from somebody that's been through the stuff that you've been through.
I love that you said that there, because I really want to promote that. Like there's an aspect you have to open up yourself, which is not like to me like a natural thing. Like can't wait to tell you my weakness and tell you how I'm failing. Like I'd rather tell
Right.
you what I'm good at and what I'm better than you at potentially, or like
Mhm.
speak into your life. But you're really touching on something as I've had all these conversations with, men that, they're going before us and sharing their struggles is it's the asking for help, like whatever that is that gets a person to that point. Like that's when like breakthrough and growth is coming. No matter what, as soon as you start involving the right people though, like I like what you said.
People connect based on failures, not on wins. I don't connect with you as a human because I'm so happy that you made $100 million. I connect with you as a human on an empathetic level because I understand the struggles. So you connect with people via struggle. You don't connect with people via wins and accomplishments.
Man, that's good. And a lot of times, like I bring up like these, when I heard these categories, the faith, family, finances, and fitness, like that's where, like in my story of my life, like I failed in all of those. That's the whole point of the podcast is like, what if I had maybe a different mentality? And a lot of it could have been taken care of a lot quicker, like what I've learned and where I've gotten to,
Mm-hmm.
had I even had mentors or like been willing to share my struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I guess, time and wisdom too, that just gets you to that place. But, I appreciate your voice, and my voice is the same. It's like, get out there, get mentorship, get help. Cause in each of those areas, we're not born with all the skills to be like an amazing, right, man. You're going to learn them by watching from other amazing men,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's
These
ego
different
and
character
humility.
traits.
It's
Yeah,
ego and humility. Get out of your own goddamn way. Get out of your own way. Drop the ego. Have some humility and learn.
there you
Right?
go.
It's easy
Yeah,
to say. Like all things aside, though, it's very easy to say. It's much harder to do, and I 100% know that because I've been through it. You've been through it. Like we know it's a lot easier to say, but if you keep preaching it and you keep saying it to people, you know that if that one person can literally change their life. And I think that that's why we're both here doing what we're doing.
that's exactly it. And you said something earlier, like you can't keep it if you don't give it away.
Mhm.
And a lot of what you're saying, like to me, I'm like everything you're saying is just all over in the Bible. Like so, I'm a Bible believing Christian, and there was this really old preacher that he's actually kind of funny, like a comedian. But anyways, he shared something like 5 years ago, and he was sharing out of all that he's learned from all these years of studying the Bible. He said something similar to kind of the thread that you're going down. And he said, "You want to know the secret to the sinless life? Is go serve others." And I just started chewing on that. And it just like,
Mhm.
he said that, and it just never leaves me. I'm like, you hardly are messing up when you have this different focus. And you're like, you know what? I came here to serve you.
Yeah,
Like,
because it's
I'm
not
going to,
about you anymore.
yeah. But when it's about me, like I don't even like life as much when it's all about me and I'm like
Right.
getting all that I want,
Right.
which it sounds counterintuitive, but the better thing is to go help someone else with what they're
Because you
doing
end up
instead.
getting more because it does come back. Right. Like it always comes back anyway.
Yeah.
I do believe that. Like I don't believe in magic and whatever, but but there is some kind of karmatic something energy in the world that it absolutely, if you're doing the right thing and if you're helping and you're serving other people, it will come back to you at some point and you will win way more than you lose.
Yeah. And hearing what all that you're saying, and to me, like we're coming at it from a different approach. It is from the Bible. It is literally to go, like that was the main thing. Go serve others, like love somebody, go be patient, go be kind with them, give to them, mentor them. And then it's cool to see you come at it, from another way too, that it's like, to me, it's the same conclusion. It's like we are wired for this. So if we're wired for this, stop doing the thing you're not really wired to be like, because it's not that
Right.
fulfilling. Start doing what like satisfies them most, and you're
Yep.
operating in your highest calling.
Yep. 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 Because once again, it goes back to getting outside of yourself. Because if you're only focusing on you, you know what I mean? Like we all know what's going to happen, or at least
Yeah,
I know what's going to happen to me. That's what I know. And I go the wrong way.
yeah, and I guess that's where I'm concluding my own self. Like it's always the right thing. Is it my natural tendency? No way. I don't. I mean, I have to. You have to mentally get in the mindset. Like, okay,
Yes.
I'm here to help you, not. Hey, what do I get out of this? That's my natural mindset. I don't
Correct.
want to do that. I don't want, it's all about
Yeah.
me.
Once it
So
starts feeling gross, you know you've turned a corner.
there you go.
Right? If you're in that moment and in the back of your mind, you've got the one over here that's going, "Hey, ask how many points I get for helping you." Right? And if all of a sudden you go, "Ugh, that's kind of like that doesn't feel right." You have made a shift. If you're still the guy that's going, "How many points do I get every time I help you with something?" Then you're not there yet.
Yeah.
It's an easy way to judge your line if you're listening.
I like that. So let's transition just a little bit.
Yep.
I'm curious on where where does fitness come into play for a guy like you? Like just taking care of yourself. As an entrepreneur, guys tend to be just like working a lot, right? They're putting in the most amount of hours, and a lot of times, sometimes health, family, all these things get sacrificed. What is some tools that you've done, or where are
So,
you at with that?
yeah, no, it's a great question. When let's see here, in 2009, when I went to treatment, I was 310 pounds. I was bloated, big fat head. I mean, I was a big boy. Um, I met my now wife and we got married in 2000. What is it now? We got married in 2013. And so we're coming up on 10 years. And in 2012, I remember the day we flew to Chicago to see Louis C.K. perform. And we went up there to see the concert. And we went and ate at a pizza place there in Chicago called Giordano's. And I remember getting the fat deep dish calzone looking pizza. And I overate like I always do. And the next morning we're going to get on the plane. And I remember walking down the tarmac runway thing to get on the plane. And I remember sitting down in my seat going, and I was like, is my fat ass winded because I just got out walking to this plane? I was literally winded from walking on the plane. And I was like, I need to make a change. And I literally downloaded like the Atkins book, right? Like that's when Atkins was really big, was back then. And I went and I started that and I committed to it and I ended up losing about 100 pounds in a year. And from there on out, I realized how much my life changed internally and externally. I mean, I even went as far as I lost all that weight and I ended up going in and having corrective surgery done to having all the loose skin removed from my body. Most painful procedure I've ever been a part of in my life. It was horrible, but it completely changed who I was in my mind. And I walked around with my chest out instead of trying to hide, right? I was the fat guy with a pillow that put a pillow over his stomach because I was embarrassed, right? I could never wear t-shirts because I didn't want people to see that I had man tits. Like I was embarrassed of who I was. And once I found that and I started working, and I was always an athlete when I was young, right? So like I was always an athlete and I always worked out, but then you lose that at a certain point, especially if you're drunk and doing drugs and whatever, like you don't really go to the gym a lot. But when I found that again, it completely changed my life. And I know that today, my confidence level and my ability to do all the things that I want to do is directly related to how I feel. And if I don't feel good about me and I don't feel good about how I'm living and care that I'm taking on my body, then it doesn't translate into the rest of my life, or it translates into the rest of my life. Right. So if I'm not taking care of myself, how can I be expected to take care of other people? Right. So it's why I get up every single day. I work out 6 days a week. Only day I take off is Sundays when I go have ice cream with my daughter. Right. Like there's the only day that I don't do something unless I'm hurt. Right. And I'm old, my back hurts. So sometimes I'm hurt. But that's the only reason that I'm not doing something every day. So I get up every single day and I have a routine that every single day I'm at the gym at 8 o'clock. I'm done at 9. I'm at the office by 9:30. And I'm up at 6:30 to help get my daughter ready for school so I can spend that hour and a half with her and then start my day. And that takes priority. And I tell everybody at my office, don't expect to see me or call me before 9:30, quarter to 10, because I'm just out. I'm not doing shit before that. And if I do get up before that to do something, I'm doing it on my own time and I'll see you when I get in. And I do that because if I am prioritizing my health and my fitness, then I can be of best service to you when I'm there. But if I don't do that, I know for a fact if I miss more than 2 days in a row, I am off. I am totally off with everything. I'm off with my life. I'm off with it all. So I know that I have to stick with that.
So routine is like you don't mess up a routine, is what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
because if I don't do it in the morning, I won't do it at night. I know that about me. I know that
Interesting.
about me. Yep, I will not do it. Like I've got too many other things going on at night. My kids home, spending time with my family, having dinner. You know what I mean? Like I won't go work out at 10 o'clock. Won't happen. So it's got to be in the morning. So that time is blocked off for that.
Yeah, I like to me I hear you like and you're defending in my mind what is like very valuable to you to having success, like like daily success, right? Not like 10 years from now. It's like it also helps that, but you're defending your time with your daughter, right? That's important. And
Hmm.
then and your health. So
Hmm.
I really like that. Um
I don't get to have everything else if I don't take care of that.
ok- Tell me more
And I don't
about that.
and I don't get to see her grow up, right? Like everybody needs that why, right? And when I'm sitting on a treadmill and I hate running, and if I'm sitting on a treadmill, I'm at mile 2 and I've got a coach or somebody in my ear going, "Why are you doing this?" It's like because I want that extra 10 years, right? The way that the path that I was going down, luckily my daughter's never seen me drink. Like I've been sober the whole time I've been with my wife and had my child. But like I know that if I don't do those things every day, what if I lose those last 10 years of seeing her grow up, of seeing her get married, of seeing her have kids, of like I don't get to see that because I'm too selfish to do some hard shit and get up and go work out and eat healthy, right? Then I mean, how selfish is that, right? It's horrible. And there's nothing I care about more than my 7-year-old daughter, right? There's absolutely nothing I care about more than her. And I'm going to do everything that I can to be here as long as humanly possible to be here for her.
I love it. That's great to hear. I think children bring in like an extra level of to your why and the motivation once they show up. Like
Yeah.
things change, and it's like not like a superpower, but like you get some gears inside you that like nothing else quite motivates like that.
Something I say on stage is that I literally never knew that I was actually capable of murder until I had a daughter.
I shouldn't be laughing, but that's kind
Like,
of fun.
we all joke about it, like, well, I'd
Yeah,
kill him or whatever. And it's like, no, no, no. Like, I have a daughter now. I could, I could absolutely murder somebody if so
you're like,
required to protect my daughter. Like, I don't care. I've been to jail. I'll do it again. Like, I'll make sure that she's absolutely protected. It changes who you are as a human when you have a
yeah,
kid, when you have a child. It absolutely changes who you are. And for people that don't have kids that say, I have a dog, sorry, you don't have a fucking kid. You have a dog, right? Like it's not the same thing. You can say it is all you want, but like when you have a child and you have that responsibility and you have that human that is literally part of you, right? Whether you believe in souls or whatever it is, but like they are part of your soul. They are part of who you are, and you would do anything for that human. right? That you may not do for other people. Um, that changes who you are spiritually, physically, everything. It changes who you are as a human.
100% agree. I say when I looked at my firstborn son, I have 5 kids, and
Wow.
yeah, the first one, that's more of a testimony to my wife, but
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
amazing. Uh, as soon as I saw him, I mean, I'm crying, but I was like the happiest I've ever felt in my life, but I could not control my emotions. And like,
Yep.
to me, there's these part of my soul or these gears in me that's all I can say that have never turned. Like, boom, they started turning. I was like, oh my gosh, I'll provide, I'll protect, I will love you, I will teach you, I will, and so I totally relate to that. And yeah, it's definitely not like having a pet. it's
No, it's
it's
not. There's nothing that drives me more crazy than that. If you couldn't tell, like that
okay.
drives me absolutely nuts when people equate the two things. I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah,
Like it's not the same thing.
yeah, yeah. I haven't heard anyone say that, but I've heard them say, "Yeah, we got our kids," and it's like, okay,
Uh,
yeah, okay, you
no,
got
you don't.
dogs. That's
Like
great.
I would kick my dog into traffic to save my
Yeah,
kid. Like no.
yeah. So in family, I'm curious. I like asking entrepreneurs this. Is there
Mm.
things like from business and structure, right? Because there's a lot of structure in business, especially if you've scaled one that allows that to happen. Is there pieces or like core values you brought into your family or structure, that it's kind of systematized in some fashion? Is there any piece of that that's kind of from business to family for you?
The biggest thing that I bring from my business world to my personal world is intentionality. Is being intentional with my time, right? One of the things that I don't believe in is balance. Balance doesn't exist. It's not a thing. Because if you're on a teeter totter or whatever, right? And you're trying to balance, you balance in the middle, which means this side isn't getting shit and this side isn't getting shit, right? Like no side's getting anything. So what I believe in is that whatever it is that you're doing in that moment is getting all of your time and your attention and you're being present, right? And if you're doing that, when I'm at work, I'm 100% in my work and I'm not worrying. I'm trying not to concern myself with what is going on at home, right? And we all know that you bring stuff to the work from home and it can screw up your day and you get less done because you're in a fight with your wife or your kids, whatever it is, right? But if you can compartmentalize that when you're at work and focus on work so that when you're home, you can focus on home and focus on that time that you're spending with your people. Anybody that follows me knows everything that I post about is being intentional with your time with your people. And that is there's nothing that I'm more passionate about than that. Like it's not about quantity, it's about quality. It's about the quality of the time that you're spending. If I spend 6 hours sitting with my daughter watching some dumb show, it's not the same as me spending an hour and a half with her playing a game and being intentional with her and connecting, right? Because that's what she's going to remember. She's not going to remember, well, daddy was around every day because I travel a lot. I'm not home all the time, right? She's going to remember the time that we spent together that was intentionally spent, not that I was here every day, right? Like that shit'll be forgotten. I mean, somebody just told me a quote the other day that was said about Warren Buffett with his kids, and that, yeah, dad was here, but he wasn't really here. Well, that's not how I want to be remembered, right? I want to be remembered that when I was there, I was there.
That's good. That's really good. Mm. Yeah, that reminds me of something a friend said too, like, and it hit me weeks ago, but it was like, it's focus today. If you're with your kids, focus on that.
Yep.
If you're at work, focus on that. But yeah, you're right. Like, you can't be like half in on this and kind of like half in that. Like, whenever we kind of multitask like that, you suck at both.
Yep.
So
Yep. There's a book I read. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was Atomic Habits or something like that. But like multitasking is a myth. Like it's not even a real thing because you lose so many percentage points of every new task that you're putting on where this one isn't getting accomplished and you're wasting so much time because you're trying to do three things at a time. And if you just focused on the one thing, That's the book, The One Thing. Whew, see, you talk it out and
Okay,
you figure out what it was. But
there
the
it
book
is.
was called The One Thing. And if you focus on the one thing that you're doing in that moment, not only does it get done faster, but it gets done at a higher level as well. So multitasking is like, don't do it, right? Like it doesn't really solve anything. You just get a bunch of stuff half-ass done, which kind of defeats
That's
the purpose.
yeah. Do you so you're saying how you guard that time in the morning. I guess that's what I said that you said.
Yep.
What about afternoons? Because I mean, work can kind of draw on, but is there you cut off and you say, "Hey, no, I'm done. I'm going home. We got," or how does that work for
I,
you?
Yeah, so I mean, I do the very best I can. Like none of us are perfect with that, but like I usually dip out. I usually dip out of if I'm at the office, if I'm actually in town, and I'm actually around my employees and everything, I will dip out no later than I'm out at 4, because I'm not getting anything done after that. I come home and then I kind of shut off. Now if a high level employee needs to call me at 5 or 6 o'clock for something, like I'm going to jump on a call and help that employee, right? But as a general rule, I've trained my staff and my people that when I'm gone, unless a building collapsed or the house is on fire, you can call me in the morning, right? You can call me tomorrow. It does not need to be addressed right now. And so I've ingrained that. And it's funny when new employees come on because they don't know that, right? And they don't understand it. And so like I have to kind of retrain new employees, like you do not call me after 5 o'clock. Like I'm home and this is what I'm doing. So I do shut it off. But with the caveat that I'm still the boss. So every once in a while I'll still answer the phone.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I have to point out when you're talking about balance, like
Mm-hmm.
that's not a thing. And and I've used the term because it kind of just like you throw it out there because like people, it makes
Yep.
sense in the moment.
Yes.
Um, but when you're saying the teeter totter thing, I was like, balance is really, it's kind of like stressful in a sense because think of trying to balance anything. It's like that's a lot of work and focus, and it's
Yeah.
like
You gotta
I
engage
don't
your
like it.
core. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and one of my friends, this made way more sense to me because I'm a guitar player. My friend Chris Wyatt, he said, try using like the word harmony, right? Like the musical sense of it, because like, and I'm slightly musical, right? Harmony is when everything plays together, everything's
Yep.
in tune with itself,
Yep.
and it's actually really pleasant to hear. And you can have melodies to a song, and there's harmonies to songs too that go with that melody. It's like all this overlapping things that just work really good. There's a lot of pieces, and when you hear songs like with harmony and melody, like it's beautiful, beautiful songs, right?
Yep.
And there's bad songs, and it's usually by us people that are still learning to write them or make them or sing them or
Yep.
or whatever it is. And I'll have my guitar sometimes and just show my kids. I'll take one string out of tune and just one chord. Oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. But
Mm-hmm.
you keep that in tune, each string, right? That tension on it, and you can play something, this harmony, this melody that are
Yep.
beautiful. So balance sounded like a lot of tedious work, and to
Because it
just get
is, because you're
nothing,
trying to run your
to get
focus in so
nothing
many
to
different directions.
yeah.
Yep.
And it where anyways, yeah, I just like that harmony. It's more like musical. You're creating
Well, and
wholly.
the other side of the business side of that too is something that me and my buddy Paul talk about a lot. Is one of the books that every single entrepreneur should read in their life if they haven't. Is called Raving Fan. So I don't know. Have you read Raving Fan?
No, no.
Okay, so you should. It's super short. You can only buy it like as a book. Like you cannot even buy it on like Audible or Amazon, whatever, right? You have to buy the actual book. It's super short, but it's about making raising raving fans in your business, right? In your clients and whatever, right? But take that a step further and realize that you have to create raving fans in your family and your home life as well of your business. Because
Ooh,
if you create
interesting.
the raving fans, of your family, if my wife is a raving fan of D&M Roofing and Be Authentic or GTFO, if she's a raving fan of everything that I'm doing, then I get to have that harmony that you're talking about. But if she's not a raving fan of what I'm doing over here, then there's always this conflict. And then you can never have that mythical balance or harmony or whatever it is that you want to call it between the two entities because they're not in rhythm together, right? Like
Mm,
they're fighting for attention, right?
yeah,
So you have
yeah.
to figure out a way to get them to not fight and to be friends. So if you can get your home life to be a raving fan of your work life because they understand your mission and they understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, then you get to have the harmony. I love the harmony thing. I'm going to steal that. So I mean, like,
Yeah,
yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's great, but like, that's a way better word, and it makes a lot more sense because it encompasses everything, right? All
yeah.
blending together and working together as one instead of right. Because what's the worst thing is when somebody tries to sing a duet and the one guy's way the hell off, and and the gal's amazing. You're like, man, I wish I could just listen to her. Like this guy sucks. But like when they're amazing together, that's when you win awards.
No kidding. And I think there's some aspect to like life's kind of like a musical. Like there's so many pieces. Like if an orchestra, how many
Mhm.
instruments are there? Add in music and choirs. How many people you can like do this together if you guys know the structure
Right.
of it.
Right.
And
And if the
and
triangle's off, I mean, you're screwed. That
he's just doing
triangle's
his own
off.
thing.
Like, yeah.
But whatever's off is gonna stand out the most.
Yep. Yep. You're
But
gonna hear it.
yeah, there's just aspects to life that it is a good analogy because you're creating and you can create with other people.
Hmm.
And that kind of goes back to like these categories that I like speaking on: faith, family, finances, and fitness. You get one of those off, man, it's not sounding good, right?
No.
Like you
No, the
collapse
one
and then
that
your
what the one
finances.
and the one that we hadn't jumped on was finances, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing that tears people apart more than when those aren't doing well, right?
Well,
And so
it sounds like finance is like the number one cause for divorces, really, is where it
for
comes back
sure.
to.
Yeah, for sure. Cause I mean, I honestly, that's probably the one that I hate talking about the most, right? I love talking about all the other ones. And maybe it's because I've had, just as many failures in that, as well, right? As an entrepreneur, it's very embarrassing when you have those financial failures because you feel like you could have avoided them,
Hmm.
right? You feel like it makes you less of a man. The best. Do you ever see that Chris Rock clip of one of his stand-up specials of just as a man, and he was saying that when a guy when a guy's hanging out with his buddies and he meets a girl, and what's the first thing that your buddies ask about the girl you just met? What she look like, right? What she look
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
When girls get together and one of the gals met a new guy, what's the first question that the girls ask? What's he do?
Yeah.
Right? So like
Yeah.
it's a real thing as a man to have to deal with that, to deal with that stress and that responsibility of keeping finances the way that they need to be, right? And when you're on the downside of that, in a down season in your life, because of that, it takes so much away from you just as a
Mm.
human, as a man, and it's really hard. Like I've been through those times, and it hurts, it stings a lot, and it's sometimes it's really hard to come back from. And I know there's people listening that are probably going through that right now, right? And literally all you can do is like start over and refocus, right? Start over, refocus. It's like golf. I don't get to think about that last shot for more than 10 seconds, right? I hit a bad shot and I have to take 10 seconds to be angry about it, but then I have to move on because I have another shot to make. And if I let that shot translate to the next one, well, then I'm done and I'm going to shoot 90, right? But if I throw away that one shot and say, okay, that happened, I'm done with it. Now I can move on and I can make this next shot. Now I still got my chance to break 80, right?
That's
And
good.
it's the same thing with finances. Like I've had to do it more than once where I've had to sit down, meditate, breathe, like and just reset and be like, okay, you screwed up. Now let's start over. Let's figure it out. Right. And that's our job that's our job as men. Uh, Fortunately, unfortunately, whatever angle you want to come from, right? Fortunately, because you know what? We get responsibility. That's good. We all want responsibility. Unfortunately, because it falls on us. It just does. And that's not being me being sexist or whatever. Like it's not. It just as a general rule, that is the case, right? Not
I
across the
agree.
board, not across the board. I understand that. There's different dynamics in different families, but as a general rule, that is the case.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think that's a category too where finances, like there's literally skill sets that guys that are successful with their money, right?
Yeah.
And some people are, everyone is like skilled with in some fashion, right? With finances.
I'm terrible. I have to hire people.
Well, you
I'm
have
ter-
some skill. Yeah, I'm just
I have
saying
the
it's just
skill. I
maybe
have the yeah.
lower.
I have the skill to hire people that know more than me. Right. I know
Well,
what I'm
that's
stupid
smart.
at.
Well, that's smart,
Right.
right? That's
Because
a
I'm an
smart
idiot.
skill.
Like if you ask me tax questions, I'll be like, huh? What? No. Like I know how to make it.
There you
That's all
go.
I know how to do. I know how to make
Well,
it.
and now you're bringing up this point that it's like what you're doing though is you have your skill is to here, you're filling in the gaps to get you up here, right? And you're like,
Correct.
well, I'll just pay for that. There's
Yes.
people that do that, right?
Yes.
And I think there's this aspect that I used to have too. Like sometimes you get too frugal and you're like, dude, I won't pay for that. I could do that myself. I could build that. Oh, I could, if I just did that. No, we don't, and I use this for like to get out of marriage counseling years ago. It's like, dude, I'm not paying this guy,
Right.
$50 to do what I can talk to you right here. And,
Right. You know,
it's so much better to have the professional involved and just
100%.
pay them.
Yes.
They're worth
Yes.
their weight in gold.
I knew that I had turned a corner when I stopped mowing my own lawn.
Oh, that's good.
That was when I knew that I understood the value of time and what I was worth.
That's good.
My
I
time
first
is
heard that
worth more.
from Rabbi Daniel Lapin talked about that in one of his books. Like
Oh, really?
when you start seeing like, dude, you can make more money doing this thing and still have some money left over, even if you paid this guy to go
Right.
mow your lawn and do your landscaping, like go
But
specialize.
but there's a caveat to that.
Hmm.
You can figure out what you're worth, right? You can figure out what you're worth, and then you figure out what mowing your lawn or whatever it is costs, and you figure out that you're actually saving money by having somebody else do it, but only if you use that time to do something else.
There you go.
And I think that's an important point that people forget, right? So if you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix while Javier is mowing my lawn, then it's not. Then it's not
Yeah.
worth it. You should just be mowing the damn lawn,
Yeah.
right?
That's
But if
good.
you're using that time to read or work or spend time with your family or whatever it is, if you're being intentional with that time that you're giving away, that task, now you figured it out. Now you're actually capitalizing on that actual concept, right?
There
But
you
if you're
go.
just arrogant enough to say I'm worth $350 an hour and the guy mowing my lawn does it for $30 an hour, I'm going to let him do it. Well, that's great, but you're not really understanding the concept.
Yeah, there you go. Or you're like me and you have, teenage sons that you're like, well, I'm going to teach you hard work. You get to mow the lawn
Yes,
now. Well,
and that's a
I'm
different.
working
Yeah,
on
yeah,
business.
that's a different angle. Right, right, right.
Yeah,
I don't have the slave labor in my house for
I
that
know. I
yet.
got
So
my
yeah,
own,
yeah,
got
you
my own
got that.
workforce.
Yeah, you got a
Uh,
team. Yeah.
they'll be on. Yeah, they'll be W-2 someday. But
Yes.
well, Eric, I appreciate you coming on. I feel like I probably could have dove a little bit deeper in each of those areas. But I think this is a great conversation. I appreciate hearing, some of your struggle and what you've learned, that you're willing to share, the AA or even going to jail and the transition to the Eric that's here right now.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of people are going to be impacted by your story. It's like, man, that guy, he owns his own business. He's got, you're expanding and scaling and he's speaking on stages and and what did he do to get there? Well, he learned to serve people. He learned to
Yep.
give back. He learned to the value of relationships. So I learned some great things just from this conversation. So I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So To everyone listening, go check out Eric. Let me say the last name again.
Oberembt, yeah. So you can find
Oberempt.
me.
There
Yeah,
we
you can
go.
find me on Facebook, Instagram as Oberempt, and you can check out the podcast. It's called "Be Authentic or Get the Fuck Out." A little bit
There we
different
go.
format to hear, but actually, it is like almost exactly the same concept because we're there to help people, right? We just do it
Exactly.
with a little bit more shock value, is all.
There we go. So, and for a father's flame, it's hey, let's put energy and effort into these areas of your life, your faith, your family, your finances, and fitness. Just every day, do make a step forward in those categories, and you're going to thank yourself in a year. So, with that, Eric, thank you again, and we'll be on for the next one.
Thank you, sir.